we're in the process of integrating with 2 other big carriers, and we're hopefully will be complete by the end of the year with those 2, and have roughly 75% of the U.S. market covered.
Great, thanks, Jim. So let me ask a few specific questions of you individually, and then we'll have some more general questions. So Scott, with regard to, yeah, hey, we're here, we're running behind. With regard to notifications, how do you differentiate useful notifications, say like a news flash from AP versus more of an annoyance, like someone beat my high score on Doodle Jump? I mean, how do you sort of gradate that?
Well, interestingly, the users kind of take care of that for you. If you behave badly, people turn off notifications. But if you're a sports fanatic and you want to get fantasy updates, there's no such thing as too many notifications. We'll see, literally hundreds of notifications to devices for folks who are doing sports updates, news updates, things like that. The other piece is just the idea of being able to sort of drive users in. Maybe it's a game and you want to actually issue a challenge. It appears to be peer-to-peer messaging, but it's actually going through our infrastructure to do that. That actually drives quite a bit of usage, which is interesting. The other one is the ability to notify users when they have either content available, which is always interesting. If I've paid for some kind of content and it's now available, I want to know when that's going to happen. So I think there's quite a few use cases for it, and it's sort of a self-governing. We really haven't had any issues. And the worst case that we have with one of our bigger customers who sends a lot of messages, they've only seen about a 9% opt-out rate.
Okay, so the data sounds like it stays within the environment of the developer. So Joel, to you then, with regard to privacy and data, that's obviously been a real flashpoint in the media lately, Latitude, Side, Facebook, and so forth. How do you deal with you have such a huge amount of data? Where do you set the bar for privacy concerns in terms of sharing data and so forth?
Yeah, there are some simple guidelines there. The one we always live by is to be transparent with your users. And so our universal location API, for example, which can locate over 100 million phones, requires that the user grant permission to share their location with your application before we do that. And so, the user making a conscious decision to opt in, we get that data, we then share it with the developer, and the user can always go back and audit who we've shared their location with at any time. Additionally, we don't store the data in a person identifiable way for any long period of time. We do keep a small history, which the user can adjust, and also can clear out of our system just like they clear out cookies out of a browser. So we're completely transparent with how the location data is accessed and shared, and that's really been the benefit of both our users as well as our developer customers.
Thanks. So John, I know you also, being an analytics company, you trade in information about the user. Do you want to speak a little bit about that as well in terms of where you draw the line?
Yeah, so it's very similar in terms of not collecting anything that's personally identifiable, having the users as part of the application download understand what's being used around that, and then presenting the data in a way that's aggregated and anonymized through it all. So one of the ways you can do that is by segmenting people. So segment your power users from your light users, and then go deep in terms of understanding the different flows through the application, the bounce rates, but do it by those groupings.
Thanks. So changing gears, Jim, I know you do work with Verizon, and obviously you have a close relationship with the carriers. How would you really characterize I guess it's sometimes more maligned intentions that are thrust upon carriers and carrier billing? It's very expensive, unwieldy, and so forth. You clearly made a business out of it. Can you give us sort of more of the positive sides of carrier billing, and what other alternatives are out there that may offset some of the perceived negatives?
Sure. So from a macro level, I grew up on the wireless carrier side. I'm happy to show the scars if anybody wants to see them to prove that. But there's definitely been a shift, I think, within the carrier space. Over the last couple of years, I think they've had some brutal lessons that they've learned in the marketplace, specifically from Apple and other competitors in certain areas. So the carriers have been humbled slightly. They now want to, instead of being the large vendor that beats up on some of their contractors, if you will, they now want to partner. They now want to foster a developer community. I think Verizon Wireless just 6 months ago had a developers community conference down here in San Jose. And they really want to be seen as a partner now. All the carriers really do, because they understand the power of harnessing bright, independent minds that perhaps have a neutral, objective outlook on things. So you're starting to see that on a macro level. They really want to foster that. They realize that they can't just have vendors come in, show solutions, and then take those solutions and apply it themselves. They have a large IT group within each carrier, and so they want to keep them utilized, but yet it's largely historically been at the expense of the independent developer, if you will. What I have seen is they're much more apt, much more willing now to work collaboratively with developers. And I think the high rates that you mentioned, Jonathan, are more from the what used to be on the on-deck model. So you see a lot of PSMS aggregators, there's roughly 13 of them. You think of the M-Blocks of the world, if you think of what used to be Mobile 365, now Sybase, etc., single point. They had very high fees that were for on-deck type of digital goods, ringtones, etc. I think the carriers would charge them 35%, and in turn, they would charge the merchants an additional 10%. So you're talking about 40 to 50% in some cases fees. Our solution basically comes in and says, hey, that's for on-deck, perhaps you can get away with that, but if you really want to be a good partner, let us integrate directly with you and offer a much lower rate. So if you think of a strata in terms of payments, I think the credit card rates are probably the lowest for merchants, anywhere from 2 to 4% on up, and probably some fixed fees associated with that. Then we're probably next. We're probably somewhere between the mid-teens to, in some cases, we could probably go single digits, but we're not working in that area right now. Then you have prepaid cards that probably fall slightly above that. And then the old PSMS model, the old on-deck, 35, 40%. So they're starting to see that being cooperative will be pretty helpful.
So there are some choices out there, it sounds like, too. Okay, let me just change gears here. Let's talk about monetization. I mean, a lot of them, obviously, we're not all altruistic like Mario is here. We're here to build applications and build businesses that make money. So why don't each of you give me just or the audience just a point or two about why using your specific functionality as part of this toolkit is good for business and for monetization specifically.
Sure. So I'll go first. The analytics really goes hand in hand with the mobile advertising in that you want to understand where is a person spending time within the application and how to retain and engage them as long as possible. So if you're using the analytics correctly, it's like a giant focus group for your product. You can optimize the product and the flows of the product, and you can serve up more ads. The other place it ties in is taking a free application and upgrading and figuring out when is the right time to serve house ads. Is it the first couple days when someone's using the app? Is it after about 30 days? Do you look at the usage patterns, and then you can upgrade someone to another free app or from the free to the premium version? So I'd say those are probably the two main ones.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing that's really interesting is the concept of in-app purchase. And today that's only available on the iPhone. There's a couple hacks for other platforms, and the solutions will come. But the idea of if I can get the app on the device, even if I have to give it away, if I can then bundle content over time and then continually get that user back into the application, that's going to be a lot more lucrative than just hoping that I'm going to make a bunch of money on the initial app purchase. The initial app purchase is not where it's at, and more importantly, the use curve for, if you've ever seen the old pinch flurry graphs on this stuff, it's sort of, lots of usage in the first couple of days and then it trails off. So how do you keep users engaged and coming back? The other piece of that is the concept of being able to do subscription, the idea of paying for a certain amount of time of content and then being notified when that's available. That's another really, really interesting model that I think we're going to see a lot more.
Do you have some examples of that you can share?
No, I can't share them yet, but keep an eye out on our site in the next couple of days. So the idea of having subscriptions and the ability to traditional publishers to be able to go to these platforms like the iPad and whatever the Android tablet's going to be. It's very, very interesting, and our customers that are using our solutions are making a lot of money. I mean, in the last 8 months since we've launched, they've made several $1 million on money beyond what they would have made just from the initial ad purchase. So
great, thanks. Joel?
Yeah, I look at this in a couple of different ways actually. One of them is just sort of to state an obvious statement is that I think engagement equals monetization. And one of the tools you can use for